thing when I first, when I came into the chapter, it was the blackball system. By that, when they voted on you, they would have a bowl of white marbles, bowl of black marbles, and a box. And they were brothers would come behind the screen and they would pick a marble and put it in the box. And you had three votes. So one brother could keep you out of the chapter. So what happens is that on that first vote, it might be more black ones than white ones in there. And the brothers would have what they call a pro and a con. Somebody would get up and speak for him, and somebody would get up and say what ass he was. He ain't shit, this or that, whatever they want to say. So that's how that would go. But on that third vote, the guy would come out, okay, you know, that changed. Um, the thing on the black ball, you knew that every brother in the chapter wanted you there. Um, then they changed it to what it is now, right now, on the vote. Uh, then you begin to see, I think when the Black Power movement kind of came in, you saw a little shift in attitude um, about the black men and the history. You had kind of like a lot of revisionist type thinking in some areas. Uh, in Theta chapter, we had some Panthers that came into the chapter and so forth. And they were doing some good. They were doing the breakfast program and things like that. But you kind of saw that. And keep in mind, when I was in the service, I was in the service for quite a while. So my relationship with the fraternity after I went into the Army was generally when I came home. I tried to stay as active as I could until I got out of the Army, but I'd been in the Army for a long time.
So at what point did you start developing or starting, because I know you've been chronicling and archiving history issues for the fraternity, for Theta in particular, and for Zelander for quite some time. When did you really start taking that up? And was there anything in particular that motivated you to do that? Or um,
Yes, like I said, once again, after I got out of the service, um, and then in '74, brother Sidney Jones, when he wrote that, he gave me that first thing. He said, you always ask him questions, you know. And that's when I started collecting um, things. I told, I had made a goal for myself. When you do the history of like a chapter like Theta, and you don't have anything to go on, so you're kind of working out of thin air. Um, I had made a goal for myself to have get 1,000 pictures of people who had been in the chapter. And that was almost like an impossible goal, but I made it. And so you just have to, I dedicated so many hours a week to the history and so forth.
so what, in your opinion, and given what you have done as a as someone who has archived and chronicled the history, why is keeping the history? Why is chronicling, archiving the history? Why is that important? Two-pronged question. Why is that important in general, and why is that important to you?
Well, knowing the history in particular, all histories, and this has always been, you should tell you this also, great histories are a collection of great biographies. And when you go to write histories, you're basically looking at stories of individuals. You talk about the story of the nation, you're talking about great biographies. Abraham Lincoln, these are people that say, well, they made history, but it was their history. And in both chapters, and Theta chapter and Psi Lambda chapter, you've had some very outstanding biographies. You've had some people that made some significant contributions, not just to this chapter, but to society. I was listening the other day on television. They were saying that they got this guy. His name is Cash. What is his name? Cash going to be the. He wants to run the FBI. Cash Patel. Yeah. So Cash Patel says, first thing I'm going to do when I get in there, I'm going to close the FBI building and turn it into a museum for the deep state. Well, if you know your history, it was a brother from right here in this chapter that designed the current FBI building as Kenny Groggs. Okay. And knowing that history, that people from this chapter here have made some significant changes in this country in terms of science, in terms of architecture, in terms of medicine. When you talk about Julian Herman Lewis, one of the great physicians, the first Black to be an associate professor at the University of Chicago. You talk about great politicians, we've talking about Dawson, but we can name others. Our great ministers, Archibald James Carey Jr., his dad, Bishop Carey. These people were very significant, not only in Chicago, but in the nation. And that's a part of your heritage belonging to this fraternity. When you come into this house, any alpha from the city of Chicago should be abundantly proud because we made so many contributions, not only to this city and to the nation, but to Alpha Phi Alpha. It wouldn't be where it is today if it wasn't for Chicago. I've said it.
Well, and so and that brings up another point. For those of us who were made in Chicago, those of us who've been active in Chicago, I remember Brother Lane saying this when I was in coming up. There's something about being an alpha from Chicago. You know, we Chicago alphas, we have this certain swag, you know, this certain arrogance. And some of it say it's unfounded, depending on who says it. Others, you know, get rather jealous. But why do you think Chicago alphas have the swag that we do, the attitude, and I would even say a little bit of the cockiness that we do coming from Chicago?
Well, you have to keep in mind that here in Chicago, a lot of people really don't give enough thought to the history of Wendell Phillips High School, because Wendell Phillips was the high school in Chicago for Blacks back in the teens and 20s. But there were some very outstanding students there. So outstanding that the Chicago Defender, they call them our boys. And a lot of them went to school downstate. It was important to know that the brothers down at Tall, after Tall got started in 1917, everybody in Chicago knew them, but they didn't know people in Theta that well. The reason for that is Theta chapter was very transit chapter. People were coming here becoming lawyers and doctors, and they would leave and go back home to wherever they were from. If you look at Theta chapter today, a good percentage of the brothers that are in the chapter come from someplace else. And that was true 100 years ago of Theta. Whereas Tall brothers were from Chicago for the most part. And the people, when they would come back here, you take people like William Jennifer Powell, who many of you don't know, he's considered one of the Black founders of aviation in the country, Black Wings. The Smithsonian Institute has a great big exhibit just dedicated to Powell. He started, and he gave up a multi-million-dollar business in Chicago. After he graduated, he was an engineer. After he graduated from Illinois, he came in, opened up a string of gas stations, had repair facilities, doing car radio type of work. Most of his business was with whites. They were coming all over because he was such an efficient businessman, very good. But he had the very idea he wanted to get into aviation. He left and he went to France with Earl Dickinson, and another Alpha brother by the name of, I'm gonna think of it in a second, but anyway, they went over there and they started the American Legion when it was all working with the white soldiers to get the Legion going. He came back to Chicago and sold all of his stuff and went to California. And he built, I have a film strip of his that the Smithsonian sent me. It's very beautiful of it, and it's the clipping of him in there. And Chuck Touquet is not here, but he's the spitting image of the man. He walks like him and everything. But he was one of the great brothers, and he was dedicated to work as an alpha here in this chapter, here in Theta and in Zion. He was a tall brother. Now, everybody in Chicago knew these people, but they had a lot of audaciousness that they brought with them, and that came from Phillips in a way. And it kind of spread. And the brothers that stayed here kind of became, because it was a wide open town. You had a lot of opportunities. Those medical schools on the East Coast, they didn't want blacks in those schools, but they could come here. Chicago had 23 medical schools between day and night. Okay. So the opportunities were here. And these guys were go-getters. They came here and they had that type of audaciousness. And it kind of lives on. This tradition that you have here on Wednesday night.
I was
Yeah.
going to ask you about that. but glad
Yes,
you bring it
it
up.
started with the brothers who, because you had back then, lawyers, doctors, bankers did not work on Wednesday.
And let's clarify, this started at the first Theta House,
4104.
4104 South of Sims.
Yes. And so the brothers, they were off on Wednesday and the classes weren't going on Wednesday. So that would be their opportunity to come down to the house and meet the new brothers and have dinner with them and have some drinks and laugh and talk. That tradition's 110 years old almost. So we've been doing that. And they've never stopped that practice. Even though brothers don't live in the house anymore, we still keep that going. No place else in the country does that.
Let me, because we're coming up on time, I have a couple of additional questions, but I want to open up to the brothers, a couple of brothers who are assembled here. If you have a question you'd like to ask Brother Lawson, let's keep it brief because I know you alphas like to talk a lot. So we have Brother Augie, you have a question?
Everyone that I read across the farm, member of each Chicago, yeah, I understand the president. And this is where the information is seen, not shared in the one in particular, the oldest one, we have a question from Dr. Evelyn Barrett, who is the world-renowned gambler in Lawson. So now we take my son's out of the alcohol to do the tutoring, which became the part of the program, which became the Tom Andre over to Dr. Barrett's home. Andre getting involved in getting the kids. So the Islander and occupy office. That's when we came to this story, getting called. And that's when the graduate Alabama.
So the question basically is about the Chicago Assembly, the intersection with the fraternity and the impact and influence that Brother Leonidas Berry had. Can you speak to that?
Well, Brother Berry came to Chicago. It was interesting. He got off a train. And there used to be an old train station down there, 12th Street. They call it 12th Street Station. Illinois Central train would come in there. And when he got off the train, he went straight to the Alpha House. In those days at 4104, he lived in the house for some time. But they always had one bed extra because when trains would come into town and all that kind of stuff. And the brother would come to the house, middle of the night, always had a spare bed there. And he writes about this in his book. He wrote a book called I Wouldn't Give Nothing for My Journey. That was his book. It's a great read. You should read that book because he recounts a lot of experiences that he had as an alpha here in the chapter. But Barry was a very noticed position, and he got here. He got in the chapter, worked hard, lived in the house for a number of years. But he went on to become one of the most famous doctors in gastronomy, forget what they call those specialists. Very noted, award-winning doctor, very active in the chapter, and he was very active with the assembly. We had another brother who got made, he was a journalist, Charles was it Jackson? What was Charles' last name? You guys did an interview with him. No, he lived in Beverly. He lived up in Beverly. Charles, wasn't Jackson? Charles Davis, yes. We'll get an interview with him. He was very active in working with the assembly. He got made in Theta at a late age. He was up in his 30s, might even been close to 40. But he had been a journalist with the Defender for a long time. But a very good brother. But the assembly, we had an awful lot of brothers who headed up the assembly. The original 40 Club, that was the Alpha Dewins. The Snakes, another big organization, all doctors. So, good question.
Brothers, anybody have another question?
His personality.
Just to be clear, the question for those who didn't hear online was asking about the personality of Jewel Callis and what your impressions were of his personality.
He had he kind of will always give you a clue as to what kind of nicknames the brothers gave him. You get pious, a rather reflective type person. If you see, he was married to Dunbar's widow. That was it. Yes, that was his first wife.
Alice Dunbar.
Alice Dunbar, and then that was she was like a cougar type. She was much older than he was. Okay, yeah, yeah. So he got into that. Now, when you read her writings about him, okay, you get this picture of kind of a lovesick type thing, so she gives us a scene where he was in town and her and her husband invite him over for dinner, and how he has nothing to say. It's real strange. He marries his second wife here. Her name was Pauline. She was an artist from Chattanooga. And that's who he had the two girls by. And then he leaves her. Now, that was real messy because when you read The Defender, all that divorce and all of that was played out in the press. And then the children, two daughters, he wanted custody. He wanted them to come. He was down at Tuskegee. Yeah, he was down in Alabama. And he wanted them to come down for the summer to be with him, and they didn't want to go. So they went before the judge. All of that's in the paper. Okay. So Callis had some tough times. But you have to keep this in, but he was 11 years becoming a doctor too. His is a story of fortitude, sticking to something. And he came here in Chicago. He was married, but he worked and he did janitorial. If you read the book, Wesley did a book on it. He worked real hard to get where he wanted to go. Keep in mind though, as each year went by, the, the jewels become larger and larger and larger. Okay, and so he had a lot of to live up to. So they kind of changed their personas too as time went by. You know, they kind of took it on. You know, good question.
Any other questions? I'm surprised.
I'm not that.
Y'all
interested.
normally
I'm not
have
that-
a bunch of
Yeah,
questions
I'm
over
not
there in the
that
corner y'all want to ask. them.
futile, my
So
man.
I'm watching the time, brother.
Hello?
Well, Ada, that's you know, they're very close to me, and when I come home and leave, I would see them in the making. I thought they were bringing them up from the cornfields. Um, the first group from there was that your group, Randy? The first group from 880, was that your group? That was, yeah. And they had uh, bunches. Melvin was in the Melvin. And Melvin, they always told us, you know, Melvin smoked cigarettes and everything bad for his health. But you want to go catch him on the centers. He was he was the fastest track person going. You know, he would leave them in the wake of it. Outstanding. But they were all good brothers. Brother Weems, outstanding historian. His own right. He's been on C-SPAN several times. He's one of the founders of Ada Ada. Robert Everett Weems is his name. Uh, Robert E. Weems. Yeah, I call him Everett. That's his middle name. Yeah. But he was a great brother. Ernie Travis. They came along. Of course, Randy. Kamal. Yeah. Silton. Really call him Silton. Yeah. But they were all very good. They came up. Theirs was a hardship type situation because they had to go through that expense to come here. But they made it happen, and they had that theta spirit. And when they got going good, they got that chapter going, they took off like, and they're still taking off. I used to tell them all the time, I said, when I die, I'm gonna ask them, can I come back to theta? If I can't come to theta, I'll go to 8A.
We have a question from Brother Scott who's online. Brother Scott, you have a question? Brother Scott, you're on mute. Okay, here you go.
Uh, Brother Lawson, just wondering, did you have any interaction with Brother Raymond W. Cannon at all? And if you did, can you speak on that a little bit?
Not personally. I had a note that I had sent him once, and I didn't get right. But he is my favorite general president next to Roscoe Giles, and I'll tell you why. He was very passionate about the history. He wasn't a historian himself, and it was through his efforts that we had the first Alpha history. And the person that paid for it was Garrett Morgan, the scientist, inventor from Pat chapter over there in Cleveland. But his Ray Cannon documented. He saw a lot of things. He should have been a historian because he had so much stuff in his head. And when he died, he took a lot of stuff with him. There's no way that he could have imparted all that knowledge. And that happens. Just like I miss Wayman Ward. Ward has so much history. Every time I sit down with him, he would drop a load on me. I would say, well, wait a minute. It was just, you know, you get to writing. And when he died, I'm sure he took a lot with him. Same with Ray Cannon.
Brother, District Director, did you have a question you wanted to pose as we get ready to, wind up?
Nope, I can come back once we're ready for the other piece.
I want to say one other thing, brothers, I apologize for my voice. I am taking some medicine. It's called Trelegy, and it affects my voice, my speaking voice a little bit. So this is why I sound a little harsh. I'm getting adjusted to it, and they said it'll go away after a certain period of time.
So,
But that's what that's all about. I ain't been drinking like that. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, are there any brothers online that have, we'll take one more question from brothers online. So anybody online have a question they want to ask Brother Lawson? Okay, so I have one final question before we move on. Brother Lawson, anyone who's ever talked to you, they know that you have a passion for the fraternity, you have a passion for the brothers. What is it about Alpha that you love and that keeps you motivated and that keeps you involved and willing to, I'm sure almost every brother here in this room at one point has had an opportunity to have a sit down one-on-one with you. You never denied a brother a question. You've always been willing to talk and share your knowledge, your information. But what you also impact is your love for the organization. What is it about Alpha that you love and that keeps you going and being involved, 63 years later?
It's the brothers. That's what it's all about, the brotherhood. And I'll tell you something. To me, coming down on Wednesday is very important because it's the interchange with the brothers that keeps you going as a brother. And the practice, it's really good. I like to mess with some of the brothers and have some fun with them, but it's all about what the brotherhood is. Because I've learned much of what I've learned in life, I've learned from the brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha. You cannot be around a bunch of alpha men and not learn anything. That's just impossible. Yeah. You're gonna learn something being around alpha. So I look forward to coming down on Wednesday because I know I'm gonna learn something. Thanks to Brother Woodhouse, he keeps me so informed. Okay.
All right, brothers. So with that, what we're going to do, we're going to move into our presentation portion. We're going to call our brother executive director, Brother Don Prophet, to come forward.
Hey, Smooth.
Yes, sir. Brother McKenna.
Is there an echo right now?
Just a little bit.
There is. Okay. Let me know if it gets too out of control. So before Brother Prophet comes up to present this award, Brother Dickie, let me say, from you, there's always so much to learn. And, I thank you for embracing me the first time we met, and for the history that you passed to me. It's very evident that you're a legend in this district, and you're a legend in the fraternity. Your wisdom that you give us is enduring and will last a lifetime. And as a recipient of one of those brothers that whose chapter that you helped to establish Mu Mu, I think I speak for all of Mu Mu and Eta Eta chapter and all the other chapters that you helped to establish when we say that your footprint is all over this district. And so for the Prophet tonight, we'll be presenting you with an award on behalf of the District of Illinois in recognition of your many years of service to this fraternity and the love that you possess for the Black and No Gold. So brother, thank you for the gift that you are to the fraternity and the gift that you are to the District of Illinois. And may you have many more years ahead of you in joy and good spirit and good health of our dear fraternity. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you, my brother.
sir. Brother Lawson, this is truly an honor to be before you right now. We've had a lot of conversations. So this is a dual role for me. Yes, as the executive director of the District of Illinois, but as an initiative of the Ada Ada chapter, we've had a lot of conversations on your role in the establishment of that chapter. And I thank you for that. I think you always say, Ada Ada got it right. Y'all real tight. And yeah, from Brother Randy Twilley to the 233rd initiate, we are. So that's because of a lot of things you put into it. So I appreciate the lessons you've given me about Alpha, about brotherhood, and a lot. So on behalf of the district, let me take the 8 hat off. On behalf of the district, under the leadership of Brother Dr. Leonard McKinnis and Jabali Matuka, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, District of Illinois, Merit Award presented to Brother Dickie Lawson, today, December 18th, 2024.
All right, brothers. Okay, brothers. This concludes our presentation for the evening. Once again, let's give it up for our brother Richard Dickie Lawson. On behalf of the District of Illinois, thank you. We've got food, and we'll see you next time. Let me get this piece. Hold up. Call your famous man. Damn, historian, Dickie. Historian. Come on, man. Get your ass over here. Hurry up, man. Man, get that plate out of your
That's when we make it, and then just when you're right. How you doing?